Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. I see we've got a few people logging in.
Hi, all.
My name is Jen. I work at Two Rivers Bookstore and Weird Sisters Yarn. I am here today with Mary Milstead from the Stacks Coffeehouse, and we've got a fantastic conversation ahead of us on Tracy Manaster and
Daviau.
Who both contributed to this new, as of November, anthology of works in tribute to Ursula K. Le Guin. With that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Mary. I hope you all enjoy.
All right, hello everyone. I'm gonna I'll give a kind of a brief introduction. Wait just a couple minutes as people are coming in. But yeah, so my name's Mary Milstead. I'm a writer and co-owner of the Stacks Coffeehouse. Those of you in Portland may have gotten to come visit us before. We're a coffee shop, but we are also a community library. So we have over 50 feet of books that are all just here to be borrowed. We don't sell any of the books. When you want to buy a book, you should go to Two Rivers Bookstore or one of your other favorite local bookstores. I'm really honored to be here with Tracy and Mo for this incredible book. Forest Avenue Press is one of my favorite publishing companies in Portland because they are always making incredible projects with great local authors. So I will kind of kick us off briefly and just kind of talk a little bit about the book. So this is Dispatches from Anarres, Tales in Tribute to Ursula K. Le Guin. And Ursula K. Le Guin is an incredible sort of literary icon in Portland and beyond. One of my favorite memories, literary Portland memories, was going to the memorial that was held for her at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall in 2018. I don't know if anyone else here was there, but it was incredible. Just moving, and it ended with like a giant dragon moving through the audience and bringing everyone outside. But it was really incredible. I also today just so happened, I was thinking about this book and what we could possibly say about such an incredible author that inspired all of these pieces. And a friend shared a speech that she gave, a commencement speech from Mills College in 1983. Which is pretty incredible. I will not read it, but I'll just sort of kick us off with the very end. And it says, and when you fail and are defeated and in pain and in the dark, then I hope you will remember that darkness is your country, where you live, where no wars are fought and no wars are won, but where the future is. Our roots are in the dark. The earth is our country. Why did we look up for blessing instead of around and down? What hope we have lies there, not in the sky full of orbiting spy eyes and weaponry, but in the earth we have looked down upon, not from above, but from below, not in the light that blinds, but in the dark that nourishes, where human beings grow human souls. So just wanted to start with that little bit of language because I hadn't read it before. Dispatches from Anarres was published in November of 2021, and it celebrates the legacy and influence of one of our most beloved local authors, Ursula K. Le Guin. I think what we'll do, I'll go ahead and I think we're going to have Tracy and Mo both read a section. I'm going to introduce them, have them read from their stories, and then we can just start talking about it. And there will also be an opportunity for people to, you can either ask a question in the chat. There also is, you can raise your hand. So when we get to that section, if you would like to kind of come on video and ask your question, we can sort of put you into the onto the panel, or you can kind of type anything into the chat. So let's start with Tracy. If you're ready for us, Tracy. So Tracy Manaster, once an inspiring Central Park balloon seller, is a graduate of Wesleyan University and the Iowa Writers Workshop. She's the author of the novels You Could Be Home by Now and The Done Thing. Tracy lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband and twin daughters and spends way too much time trying to map a road trip that hits each national park during its most beautiful season. Tracy, would you like to please read from your story?
Thank you, Mary. All right. So my story is Prothalamian. In the first month of the year, Dream Giver forgot which bed was which, and we all slept visions meant for others. We troubled over it, first alone, and then at family hearths, then hearth to hearth to hearth, and then as one we went to Grandmother Subtle. Some comfort we found in hearing, yes, she'd weathered such a shifting before, in the long ago summer when first she'd bled. On her word, we cut parsnips for stew and waited. There were some among us who reveled in the change, seeking quilts with chores undone. The schoolmaster was always abed by dusk. Each night he became the baker's youngest daughter, and he danced in the village square. Youths queued up to touch his breasts, and fine powder rose on contact like flour. In the second month, an osprey circled the crescent moon. We went solemn into our houses, knowing what that foretold. A mother beyond the mountains birthed 2 wolves in a single call, or so we heard. We spoke of it in half voice, having never spoken of such a thing before. St. Efric's Day came. Our unwed dug together for the blessing stone, buried each year at the landing gate. Our mayor stood ready to daub it with her palm blood. Till sunset our young ones dug, and after. Hands blistered, then burst. The baker's youngest daughter was the first to voice it. The stone was gone. We said it as well, all of us, divvying the absence, the weighted words. Timothy Dare offered the yolk-colored luck pebble he'd carried since childhood, and we saw it bloodied, then buried, but we knew it wasn't the same. The sojourners arrived, their painted sledges dull with mud, smoked fish they had to trade, and dried fish, and clever children's rattles hewn of fish bones. We asked for nets. Grandmother Subtle had seen in the growth of bank moss that this would be a fine year for quickfin. The sojourners had no nets. They swore it on the path itself. No nets, no rope, no tools that were meant for mending. The wolf twins beyond the mountains died, or so we heard. Their brothers who walked on 2 legs were no longer able to see the color green. Our youths lost their shoes at the swimming hole, girls their right shoes, boys their left. Timothy Dare and the baker's youngest daughter discovered their feet were of a size and took it in turns to wear a pair entire. The rest hitched around uneven, like drunks, and the cobbler wouldn't come again till spring. Early mushrooms came up, every one of them fish-colored. None of us could tell vision caps from stew buttons from death slips, not even Grandmother Subtle. By the 9th month, our dreams had returned, proper and sorted, well-ironed, the baker's youngest daughter, having already exposed her breasts to Timothy Dare, found her righted dreams less potent than wax. The schoolmaster wept and did fractions. Dirty moon pockets bunched beneath his eyes, and we never again saw him eat bread. Instead of millet, our fields yielded grains of glass. These we ground into flour and johnnied into cakes. Though our stomachs bled until quieted with goat's milk, the cakes went down golden sweet like honey. In the 11th month, frost returned, and we gave thanks that this at least was uncorrupted. Our mare turned into a sow, then grew the brutal tusks of a boar. She gored her last lieutenant, and lavender bloomed out of seasons, where he died. No one beyond the mountains now could see the color green, or so we heard, and the wolfkin had begun to lose orange. We spoke of this less to speak than to have spoken. Gossip, a panacea for dread. And this grief. Grandmother Subtle dreamed of her own grandmother 3 nights in a row, and on the 4th night she developed a second mouth. It settled square between her shoulders and had a tongue and a child's set of teeth. We gathered, all of us. We burnt the herbs we'd learned from her to burn. We cracked bones for marrow broth. We placed black river stones at her bedposts, and yet our oldest and most beloved kinswoman passed from our knowing, the night of autumn's equinox, that mouth calling the name of one she had never married. Though our leeches shied from taking, and our rams refused to cover, we still held the plenty feast of St. Joya the Bald. Our children made themselves ill, sneaking sweets. No word came from beyond the mouth in the 15th month, and no word ever came thereafter. It rained on the nuptial day of Timothy Dare and the baker's youngest daughter. We stood up for them, nevertheless, all of us, and sang round them in our 8 concentric rings. The schoolmaster sang his part, his voice lower and more rusted than he'd dreamed it. Still he sang, he did, we heard him, never would we say he shirked. At our circle's center, the couples unbound each other's hair. Doubtful our voices reached them through the storm, but still we sang, as if this were a kinder year, as if our songs themselves were shelter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. And there's so much to talk about, but before we get into it, I think let's pass it over to Mo so we can kind of have both stories in the air as we talk. So no, Mo, I know yours is a little bit longer. I don't know if you want to just kind of read the first page or two, or if there's like a good stopping point for you.
I'll wing it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's too long.
Okay. But just I know it's so great. So but kick it off for us, and then we'll sort of get to talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to read my bio?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I sure do. Yes, I do. Mo Daviau moved to Portland, Oregon shortly after graduating from the Helen Zell Writers Program at the University of Michigan. Her novel, which is awesome, Every Anxious Wave, was published by St. Martin's Press in 2016 and was a finalist for the Oregon Book Award in 2017. Her essays have been published in The Rumpus, The Toast, Nailed Magazine, The Offing, and Essay Daily, among others. She moved to Los Angeles in 2020 and lives in a giant old house in the Highland Park neighborhood with a witch she found on Craigslist. And she doesn't mention it in her bio, but she has also read at the Stacks. So in the before times when we got to have readings here, it's been a while. We did get to have Mo read some of her work.
Yay, and thank you for that, Mary.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I love your coffee shop. I hope to return to Portland sometime and enjoy the space and the coffee and you. Okay, my short story is called Valuable, and it's narrated by a character from Every Anxious Wave. It's narrated by Glory, who is the daughter of Lena in one of her parallel lives. Whoop! Let's just use these. When I was a kid, maybe 9 or 10, a woman named Jennifer Thurman would squat in the yard beside my family's house in Seattle and drink from our garden hose. She and my mother were the same age, but her hair had already turned gray and was held in a greasy ponytail that always looked like it needed to be redone. Jennifer used to come around in the afternoons before my parents came home from work when I was outside with my babysitter. I once offered this woman the string cheese my babysitter gave me as a snack, and she took it. I asked my mother if the woman who drank from our hose was homeless. So one afternoon, when she was home early from work, my mother asked Jennifer if she needed anything. When Jennifer began to twitch and pull at her hair, my mother told me to go inside the house. My parents were physics professors at UW, the developers of the first system of time dilation, rudimentary time travel via the Einstein-Rosen bridge. My parents explained it as a series of unseen pulleys and weights that tugged your body across space-time into the past, controlled with a wristlet app called Glowworm, which my parents named after me, Glory, and the term wormhole. I never knew if Jennifer Thurman had chosen the time-traveling family's house on purpose, but that day, when my mom asked her if she needed anything, Jennifer said, "Go back in time and kill my father." Jennifer recounted the story of her childhood undoing this way. She was sitting in the back seat of her father's Lincoln Town car as it fishtailed along Highway 26 towards Portland. She was 9. She knew that her father was the one who had murdered her mother, though he had told her that a buddy of his had accidentally done it when she tried to step in and stop a fight. He told her that her mother was a stupid bitch and she was better off without her. Jennifer tried not to cry when he told her not to be scared. She tried to put it all together in her mind when he told her where she was going and what to do with the men that came in her room and how it didn't matter if she liked it or not, to just say that she did. When my mother took me along a high-risk time travel reconnaissance mission, I did not understand, but I came with her to July 29th, 1987. Hoping to look like the good prospects for robbery, we borrowed or stole, this was easy as travelers because we had no identification, and what were the cops going to do with people who could escape custody by just disappearing? A brand new Mercedes sedan, gleaming gold. It seemed unlikely that this brand new vehicle could actually break down, but my mother would just let Jennifer's dad think she was another idiot woman who'd forgotten to fill her gas tank. My parents are remembered not only as scientific pioneers, but as feminist heroes. The number one use of the wormhole, before the government commandeered it for military combat and intelligence, before my father cut a clean inch-long incision into my upper arm and installed one of the 3 magnetic wormhole tethers that functioned independent of the now monitored glowworm control system, was to delete past sexual assaults from the lives of women. My mother taught them to go back and edit that part out so everything after would be different. Randall Wayne Thurman slowed the town car as he eyeballed my mother and her little girl in the gold Mercedes with the hood up along the isolated stretch of highway. Maybe he thought himself that he could at least make off with that idiot woman's purse, if not with the child. My mother, scientific genius, had brought me along as bait. Mom stood arms akimbo as Randall Thurman pulled over and swaggered towards her, leaving the driver's side door of his town car wide open. Jennifer's father was a thick man with a red face, plucking a cigarette from his lips and tossing it into the road. Excuse me, ma'am, can I help? The gun lay on top all the other items in her purse. Out it came, silver and shiny. The bullet hit him right between the eyes and he fell backward on the pavement.
Gonna stop there?
Yeah.
Exciting. Okay, thank you so much. Beautiful, and I love both of those stories. For those of you who haven't read the book yet, one of the things that that is really enjoyable is that after each story, there is kind of a little section about sort of what it means to the author, how it kind of connects to Ursula K. Le Guin, or how this sort of story came about. So I have, kind of a general question I have for both of you, but I would also love for you to kind of talk about just that sort of initial connection, or sort of what it means to you to have it be in this book in tribute to Ursula K. Le Guin. But also, like, there's really great things happening with time in both of your stories. Obviously, Mo, yours is sort of has a time travel element, but also Tracy, there's these time markers that are very important, or feel that they're very important in your story as well. So I kind of wanted to ask you both to kind of talk about, Ursula and the reasons why it's in here, but also kind of how time works, or sort of what you were thinking about how that's working in your story. Tracy,
No, okay, so I think the question about time for me taps into what I really love about so much of her fiction and her science fiction, which is that it's presented as a whole world that simply is, that does not need to be broken down and explained. I know that there are works of science fiction that get very sciencey, and I love plenty of those. But I think what I love best is that this is just a whole world that works differently from the world that the reader is in, and you can kind of joyfully and unabashedly dive in. And so for me, the marking of time was a bit, it was important that this is a community that's on a calendar that has a 16th month, and that has these holy days that are not of any received or current practice, but could have evolved from somewhere we are, or could be something entirely alien. So kind of a foot in both worlds.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. So my short story is sort of an extension of Every Anxious Wave, and I started writing Every Anxious Wave in 2010, and that was, I know I'm late to the Ursula party. The first time I read anything by Ursula K. Le Guin was in 2010. I read The Left Hand of Darkness at a coffee shop. Like I started it there and I finished it that night. It was in one sitting. It was like obsession. I just sat and read it. And I don't know that I like Le Guin's use of time, which seems sort of like, what is, like, that's not what she's there for. Like, is sort of, well, okay. My time travel stories are sort of obsessed with like marking moments of history, whereas Le Guin, like, time is just sort of nebulous, and there's like no recognizable like human history that we would pick up on as with markers that we would be familiar with. So like when I read Left Hand of Darkness, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's in the future or the past, it doesn't matter. But my time travel obsession has a lot to do with like a fixation on a moment in the past. So.
Nice. So did you read, you in 2010, you read The Left Hand of Darkness while you were writing, or before, like while in the process of writing?
Well, yeah, around the time I started writing Every Anxious Wave. So.
Nice.
Same coffee shop?
This would have been in Austin still. So this would have been Bennu or Cenote or Thunderbird, one of the three back in the day.
Nice. Well, and Tracy, I love what you were saying about kind of the, because also the language in both of your pieces and throughout a lot of these, this sort of idea of defamiliarization or whatever, like we're just here, like there's not a lot that's being explained. We're just sort of in the world of the story, which we get that sense from both of these pieces. Can you guys talk about, and the answer can be no, but so I know you guys know each other and you both have pieces in this. Like, have you had conversations with each other about your different pieces, or sort of like about Ursula K. Le Guin, or sort of your participation in this piece, in this book?
Did we, Tracy? I know we like discussed it around the time Susan was inviting submissions.
There was a very excited group chat when both our pieces were accepted. And I don't know, did I see a draft of I know that this is, did I see a draft of this before you sent it into?
I think I gave it to our writing group to review prior to giving it to Susan.
Right, I know.
Yours until it came out in the book.
No, I know I have always been very interested in kind of the way the every anxious universe continues to unfurl, because I know you for a while we're working towards a young adult project with I don't recall if it was these characters or
Gloria and two of her friends.
And kind of again that kind of joyful and not over explained, but just works and is so cool time travel. So I don't remember if it was this story or another that I had seen.
Right, I think it was this one.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely enjoyed reading your piece when I finally got around to it in the published edition. It was sort of like, this is a weird analogy, but like work with me here. I imagine like a bowl of plastic jewels, like a child would, like child's jewelry, and like putting them in my mouth and they have flavor. That's what like every sentence of your story reminded me of.
I love that.
That's a great blurb.
Yeah,
if you want that on a book cover, Tracy, it's yours.
I will take it. Anytime.
Speaking of book covers, Gigi Little designed this beautiful book cover, and Susan DeFreitas is the editor. There's so many great Portland authors throughout here.
Yeah, is Gigi here? I see Steven's here.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there she is. I love this cover so much, and I dimly recall reading or hearing an interview with Le Guin saying that she seldom had people on any of her book covers, because in so many of her works, the kind of the hero protagonist is not a white person, that the white people are actually quite often the deeply problematic bad guys. And so when we saw this cover for the first time, I was delighted at the at so much, but at the human we've got there. So thank you, Gigi. I don't know if you're muted, but all the applause.
Yes, I see a thank you. Yeah, Gigi. So in terms of, let's talk about place a little bit. So, a lot of this is here in the Pacific Northwest, or, sort of a lot of the authors, and obviously Ursula K. Le Guin was important not only to the world, but to us. We feel kind of a particular association. How does the sort of the area of Pacific Northwest play into either these stories for you or your writing in general? Mo, I know you're not here anymore, but we're here for quite a while.
I'm here in my heart. Well,
back to us.
It's under conversation right now with the gentleman. Where was it? Place. So Glory, who narrates this story, grew up in Seattle. Her parents are physicists at University of Washington, and the snatching of the child scene that I cut off there, that takes place on Highway 26 on the way to Portland. So that's definitely a Pacific Northwest story. How does it figure in the I've been writing about Los Angeles lately. I grew up around here, so this is more home. But
Do you find that you tend to write more about the place where you are at that physical time, or
yeah,
like away from it?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, there's something, I mean, there's sort of more of like a need for literature and books in Portland, I feel, more than when I'm here in LA, which is home, but it isn't home. It's sort of a conundrum here. Whereas there's like more of a community feel where like we kind of gather around each other's stories in Portland. And I think that there's definitely like, for me, that's what like writing about the Northwest is not really about writing about like a certain kind of tree or rain or the politics of the place. It's more about community.
Now, I think this is the first thing I have written that has a Pacific Northwest landscape feel. I think my first two books were Arizona, set in Arizona, and the one I'm working on now is set in Utah, where I grew up. So, but I think the moodiness of the weather and the water and the fish and the mushrooms, and it's a very damp short story. It has that feeling, and that I don't know if that was explicitly tied to knowing that this was going to be sent merrily off to the anthology of Portland writers about a Portland luminary. I don't know how much of that was deliberate. I know that the way back kind of initial image that gave rise to this story was a horrific nightmare I had where Sarah Palin turned into a goat and stole my purse. So there might have been a little bit of a like isolated Alaska feeling going on. But that's kind of the earliest seed moment of this story, which was embarrassing to admit on film. But now you all know a little bit more about me.
Art comes from everywhere. I love that.
Yeah, I can even that.
Yeah, that's quite a dream. Mo, how about you? Where did this story come from for you? Was there a I know it's sort of your using characters from every anxious wave. Did you already have this in process, or did you pull it together for the anthology, or how did it come about for you?
A little of both. I was sort of playing around at the time that Susan invited me to contribute with like Tracy was saying, like a YA kind of story about Glory and her like in the future, a time travel like in the 2040s, and like a lot going on, and they save the world or whatever I had in mind. I don't even remember. So this is one of the things, this is one of the scenes that I had written, and then I turned it into a short story specifically for this anthology. So that's the history of that. And it takes place at the end of the world, and Glory, who is a teenager in Every Anxious Wave, is in her late 40s here, and she's been given like permission by heads of state to be one of the last people on Earth, and sort of how she's like dealing with that. So
quite intense conundrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other sort of things I really liked, especially Tracy, in your piece, you sort of, there's food, obviously people do things with food, but this, instead of millet, our fields yielded grains of glass. Like this glass cake thing, johnnied into cakes, really powerful and visceral, which I got a lot of through your piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have anything to say about food. I was thinking about it. So I asked you guys to tell me what your pairing would be. So for the shop, I do a little like, coffee drink plus whatever the book is, just because it's fun, and I get to do it. And if I do happen to know what somebody really drinks, I like to use that. But I love that you guys both gave me great answers about what you would order, and also like what your characters might be having, which is not the same because, hopefully, yeah, we have more creature comforts here in the shop, more dairy, and but yeah, just curious how that sort of imagining what characters would do off the page, and how and I think Tracy, can you remind me what your answer was? I think yours was a tea
Yeah, so I myself would have a dirty chai, which is both spicy and caffeinated. But I said these characters probably would have something, herbal that they would have had to grow and harvest themselves. And actually, that this was a great thread, email thread, sorry audience that you were not a part of, that I've been thinking about, because both of our answers were, our characters probably would like coffee, but are in a time and place and circumstance where there is no coffee. And different though these stories are, they both deal with some kind of end times lack of resources and lack of access to luxuries. And I thought that was, especially how very different the stories are from one another. I thought that was definitely speaks to the Guin's work and our current state and preoccupation. And I was, when I was doing the line edits for this anthology, it kind of blew my mind that I wrote it pre-pandemic, with all of the things breaking down in new and unexpected ways.
You reach, yeah, your imagination reaches for something and then the world shifts in that direction. Is pretty strange.
I made it happen. I'm sorry, y'all.
The power of words. Well, so how, not that we have to go deep into kind of pandemic stuff, but we have all been living through weird things the last couple of years. And so as writers who write about a variety of things, like how has that impacted your writing or things that you're sort of working on now or next? Not a whole lot of pressure, but just to kind of speak, how does that look like? I know, Mo, you said you're writing more about LA because that's where you are now. I'm just curious if you've noticed any changes in your practice or in your focus.
I didn't really write in 2020. I wrote one essay in 2020 and it got published. So 2020 is
so good though.
Acceptance rate year for me, which I say a little tongue in cheek. So that I wrote an essay it got picked up by the Rumpus about my lowest moment of the pandemic. And then this past May, I had this like sort of vision about what I wanted my next novel to be. So I've been like trucking like whoa on this novel, which is called Epic and Lovely, which comes from, it's explained differently in the book, but it comes from this mantra that I would recite to myself every day during the worst of the pandemic, which was, may my future be so epic and lovely as if to be divine. And so the mantra of this group of characters is, may our deaths be so epic and lovely as if to be divine. So.
That's exciting.
I'm so excited for this book. I also had, I've had a very fallow pandemic, that it's hard to find the brain space to write, and kind of the quiet, you mentioned the twins in my biography, they were doing middle school at home, which is so much worse than middle school at school. And so it's a little bit not necessarily having the time and space to kind of immerse myself in the writer brain, but also to get to the quiet internal creative mental place. That's a really vulnerable state, and I was not prepared to have the walls around my thinking be permeable. But I'm inching back to it, and I've had ideas to drag the book I'd finished just before the pandemic, revise it kicking and screaming into post-pandemic, and I think it'll actually work a whole lot better. And there's a book that I was about between a third and a half done with by the time the everything shut down, that I am kind of slowly falling back in love with. So the brain is coming back.
Is that the one that I read?
Yes, it is.
Here for it.
All right, and Mo approves. So so now I've got to.
Excellent. And also I think that in the chat, if anyone has any questions, we're kind of talking and I'm sort of rolling questions, but if anyone, we don't have to sort of break and do a full QA. So if anyone is thinking about something that you would like to ask, please put it in the chat or raise your hand. Yeah, that's great to hear about kind of what you guys are working on. And one mention for everyone, I think it may have been in the email, but in addition to being able to buy this beautiful book from Two Rivers Bookstore, if you've not read Mo and Tracy's books, they are also available there. So you can get 3 at least and really fill your shelves. Great stuff.
Yep. Collect them all.
That's right.
I especially recommend The Done Thing by Tracy Manaster, which is one of my favorite books of all time.
Oh my gosh, I'm blushing.
It is great. I've read it as well.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
So maybe another question, because I think that a lot of us have had we've all had various experience, but a lot of us have been more fallow during this time. What about reading? Is there anything that you guys have been enjoying as readers during this time, or that you would recommend? Oh, all 4 books are linked at the bottom of the event on the website. So.
Oh, thank you, Two Rivers.
Thank you.
Yeah, what have you guys been reading other than this book and other pieces in here? Is there anything that you would like to share that's been enjoyable?
I've been a crap reader this whole time. I'm not gonna lie. Like, what I started reading Detransition Baby and got bored with it, and that's not to say anything about that. It's me. That's the problem there, not the book. Trying to think, what else have I read lately? I mean, I read a lot of this and enjoyed it very much.
I've actually my reading habits shifted pretty dramatically into the sci-fi and fantasy space. I think a little bit of escapism, and I'm currently rereading and obsessed with Noor Nerea Korafor's kind of Afrofuturism, just amazing sci-fi. And I know that the 3rd of her Akata series is coming out. That was kind of probably the most magical children's books I've ever read. So Akata Woman may be out yet, and I'm gotta finish finish what's in front of me before I can have the next. I read quite a lot of Naomi Novik. Again, just kind of the complete escapism of of fantasy, of science fiction, even if it's very deliberately and clearly tethered to problems that we are having in the here and now. It's enough of a step aside that I'm able to walk through that door.
I also admit that I've been reading a lot of like psych self-help books this whole time. So.
I've been watching a lot of TV. Whatever gets us through. I've got a question from Gigi that I will pass along. So you two have been in a writing group together. Can you talk about your influences on each other writing-wise, and whether through that group or otherwise? So we already talked, you've shared some pages, but yeah, would you like to talk about how you guys have influenced each other?
Tracy was one of the first people I met when I moved to Portland in 2014. We were set up by one of my teachers at Michigan, who was a friend of hers from Iowa Writers Workshop, Sugi Ganeshananthan. And we've been friends ever since, and we've been in 2 writing groups together. And I've like everything that Tracy has been working on that she felt comfortable putting forth in the group, I have read and enjoyed. She was always like one of my like an enjoyable read. Like there's enjoyable reads and there's instructive reads, and then there's like really instructive reads, which is where I would put Le Guin, like, because I always like come away from Le Guin feeling like I learned a lot. But maybe other writers are more entertaining. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, she has a very she's very good at torturing her characters in a loving way.
I would never ever want to be one of my characters. No, I actually the day I met Mo was the day I got my first book deal. So she has this aura of good writerly luck always. And I think one thing, so we've been in two writers groups, and I think have don't
We
tell
also,
the other writers in the group, but have also sent each other stuff back and forth, especially after Mo moved away. One thing I've got out of our relationship, in addition to a glorious friend, is the confidence to seek out humor, as opposed to kind of having it burble up happenstance. But to make my writing funny, and to know where that humorous beat is, and also when to just scale back and let the joke have space to balloon into a chuckle for folks. So love you.
love you too.
Okay. I got another question, I think, from Stephen O'Donnell. It says, I love these stories so much. One of the things I so enjoyed in Tracy's piece was the juxtaposition of familiar and unfamiliar, especially the use of regular names like Grandmother Subtle and the wonderfully named Timothy Dare in a setting that's a sort of created mythology. I wonder about the choice to do that.
Okay, so Timothy Dare a little bit comes from the Roanoke colony that kind of disappeared, and in undergrad I studied archaeology, and I had a class that was kind of the excavation of Roanoke and theories, and there was a theory at the time that Roanoke disappeared because the grain was bad, and they all went completely insane. There was a theory also blaming that for the Salem witch trials. So I'm not putting a lot of stock in the grain theory, but the closeness and isolation of this community, and things getting more and more uncomfortable and on the margin and bizarre, had that feeling. And the first child, kind of first white child born in that colony, was I believe Virginia Dare, and so I completely stole that. And then Grandmother Subtle, it felt like something out of Fable. Fable felt kind of crafty and almost vulpine, and so I indulged myself a little bit. I'm glad you liked it.
It's nice. And I think it's similar to what you talked about also, connecting with Ursula K. Le Guin's work, is that sort of, you're just there in the moment of the story. And so, yeah, the use of those familiar and unfamiliar names is great. So of the other stories in here, nobody else is here, but you, well, I don't know who else is in there, but what other stories in here have you guys liked, or sort of would you recommend? If not to put you not to put pressure on you, but I know there's a lot of great pieces in here. I have not had a chance to read all of them as I've been flipping through, but I'm wondering if there's any that you wanted to call out in particular.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I loved Thread. That was just haunting and like a complete fairy tale. Renee Denfeld's the ones who walk away was that will wreck you. So prepare to be wrecked. And then one that and I would say this even if she weren't here, one that popped out at me was Gigi's story, which got a lot of the wit and the humor that you would sometimes see in Le Guin's work, that I think a lot of the stories did not nail in quite the same way, and that I know perhaps I was trying to be fancy and anthropological, and perhaps was more pretentious than witty, and so I loved that. It was so funny and so just scathing and smart.
For some reason, I tended to like compare myself and my writing style against Stephen Allred's story. Like his was just so like masterful, and like he like did the assignment correctly in my mind. And like I don't write like that, but he does, and that's perfect. And then I felt bad about not being more of a Le Guin scholar. But I should not put these pressures upon myself because we all are who we are. And then I enjoyed our Tracy and I's classmate, writing group mate, James Mapes's story.
Yes.
So, Gigi, I haven't read yours yet. I'm gonna do that after we hang up.
You will enjoy it.
Tracy, you have spoken eloquently about Ursula K. Guin and how you've connected, but I don't think you said how you were introduced to her work. I know Mo said in 2010 while she was writing Every Anxious Wave. Do you have a memory or a story about her, or sort of when did you become introduced?
Yes, so I would say even later than Mo. I had a colleague whose mother was visiting the office from out of town, and the trajectory was plane landed. She went to a bookstore because she'd finished a book on the plane and needed a new book, and then she had Lathe of Heaven, and it was several chapters into it, and was kind of proselytizing about how good it was and how she loved these books and was rediscovering them, and there went that entire fall as I was doing quite a bit of catching up. But this would have been as late as 2014. Again, I'm late to the party, but very, very glad to be here. And I think also Susan, the editor, has done some delightful proselytizing, and I think rightly so, and got me hooked.
Yeah, well, and her introduction is gorgeous in the book, sort of how she speaks about Ursula. It's really great. Yeah, I think actually my first Ursula K. Guin was actually a children's book. There's like Solomon Leviathan's 931st trip around the world, and I have a child named Solomon, so that showed up at my house, and we're like, what? I was like, what is this amazing thing? And it was familiar with her name, so I went from there.
It was fun. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about science fiction. I think because so many that have been recommended to me are so, you just start to get into the plot and the world building, and then there's 3 chapters about how the rocket ship is built. Kind of like you're reading Moby Dick and you're following the plot, and then you get 3 chapters about blubber in the similar ways, and so. Again, just the wholeness of the worlds, and I think the preoccupation with kind of who we are, the systems that make us, the systems we resist, the systems we embrace. It's almost, in addition to being science fiction, it's like social science fiction. It's like anthropology fiction and sociology fiction, and it's so cool. I'm glad I'm at the party.
Agreed. Yeah, does anyone else have any questions? Go throw them in the chat if you do. And you guys, because you know each other and have talked about these stories and other stuff, you probably don't have any questions for each other because you maybe have already asked them.
I'm curious, Tracy, if you want to talk about it, and you can say no to this, but what are you writing right now? And if so, what are you working on?
I am writing, and it is a book about the worst bar mitzvah ever. It's a funny book that takes place in the span of 24 hours, and you've read about a third of it. And so it kind of was paused halfway through the book. There was a pandemic. My brain broke, and now my brain is slowly returning, and I'm finding it funny again. And so I'm the little engine that could here.
This is insider information, but did you add the pandemic to the story to make the protagonist older?
I did not add the pandemic to the story. I realized that I'm going to set it to right before the pandemic because I've written a truly amazing final paragraph that will be so much better if you know how weird things are about to get for these poor characters. So for once, it's it's an outside force being awful to my poor characters.
And not the thumb of Tracy.
No, not me. For once.
Did you read speaking of being cruel to your characters, did you read the coverage of Hanya Yanagihara's books lately about how someone called her like she's like over her characters like they're ants and she has a magnifying glass and she's burning them?
I think I read that as well.
No, but now I want to. If nothing else, for inspiration and commiseration.
Do you both consider so these are short pieces and you've both written novels. Do you find yourself do you consider yourself mostly novelists or mostly short story, or sort of how do you, how much of either do you do in terms of your writing practice? Either of you. Mo, you go first.
Oh, this was the first short story I'd written since grad school. I generally don't write short stories. I don't think I'm good at them. That I'm okay at them. I had to write them for grad school, so I wrote them for grad school, and they all got rejected when I sent them out. And I was like, you know what? My short form is the essay. I'm a fantastic essayist, and I love the novel. Those are my two comfort zones. That's not to say that I will never write another short story. I probably will, but not my love. I don't love it. Yeah. I love other people's short stories. I think that it's a more masterful and it requires more skill than a novel, I think.
Yeah, I also, this is the first short story I have written since graduate school, and actually I stopped writing short stories I think the first semester of graduate school and just turned in chunks of novels because I don't think I have the restraint to structure a good short story consistently. So I'm all novels all the way with occasional bursts of, I don't know, snarky satire. I've done a couple of things for McSweeney's, but mostly it's just, the insanity of working 2 or 3 years on a book and not knowing what's going to happen with it.
Do you have any inspiration to take these characters into a novel?
I don't think so. I don't see these characters really existing outside this bubble of this one little story. I think because a lot of them are archetypes. We've got the young girl, the dashing fellow, and not really fully fleshed out. And then I think also because it's kind of a grim story of the world's ending, but we still trundle on, and I don't want to write that story.
You don't want to stay there for 2 or 3 years?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I'm glad that you wrote these short stories and that they got to be in the anthology. Yeah, but that's cool that these are a first in a long time for both of you. All right, I think we've got. Are we ending at 5? I think we are. There's Jen also. Hi. Does anyone else have any questions for these lovely authors who are sharing their work with us? Everyone's quietly just listening in awe. Mo, do you think that you will keep writing sort of these characters? I know that you're working on a project now, or sort of like, you're just kind of following. Yeah.
I'll come back to Glory at some point because there's an idea of like Glory and her partner and their kind of nemesis they have a little bit of a story in my head. So I'll probably come back to that eventually. But right now I'm like hammering out this other novel, which is sort of a rewrite of my second novel that didn't sell in sort of a way. I just made it more brutal, and this is probably gonna, I hope it sells.
Yeah, torture your characters more. That's
Yeah.
what we want. Yeah.
Totally.
I got a question in the chat. Michelle wants to know when you both knew you wanted to be a writer.
When I was 8, and I was reading Judy Blume and Beverly Cleary, and I was like, I want to do this.
Probably roughly the same time and same authors. Now, took a little while for me to realize that I could, and that was a thing that real people did. But yeah, right around the same time that I became a reader.
Excellent. Well, is there any, I want to hand it back to Jen so she can sort of share information and make sure everyone knows how they can use their coupon to get the book. Is there any other last things that you guys would like to say about this book, or before we hand it off to Jen?
I just want to, again, shout out and thanks to Laura, the powerhouse, tireless, duct tape that holds the Portland writing community together, and just her really cool eye for amazing projects like this. And I think this is the second of Forest Avenue's anthology. The other was, weird, creepy tales out of Portland, and everything that that Forest Avenue puts out is. She finds gems. It's incredible. So shout out to Laura and to Forest Avenue.
And thank you to Susan for prodding me to write another short story for the second time this decade, or last decade, I guess, and for all your help and vision. This is an amazing book.
Excellent. And yeah, I want to also thank Laura Stanfill and Forest Avenue Press. Always a pleasure and a joy. I mentioned Gigi Little was the cover designer and also one of the authors, editor Susan DeFreitas. Also Two Rivers Bookstore for hosting and for asking me to join as moderator. Also the estate of Ursula K. Le Guin for supporting the book project, and Literary Arts for a fellowship that helped fund the printing of Dispatches. And I will hand it back over. Jen, do you want to kind of let everybody know what they need to do in order to get their books?
Absolutely. So when you got your confirmation email from registering for this event, you at the bottom should have had a coupon code that you can use online at tworiversbooks.com to order a book and get $5 off of the cover price. If you happen to live in the neighborhood, you can also bring that email into the shop, show it at the register, and we'll give you the $5 off there. Thank you to everybody for showing up. Thank you for your questions. Mary, thank you so much for moderating. Mo, Tracy, thank you for joining us. This has been a fantastic event. We've enjoyed it a lot. Other things that are coming up at the shop, we have in 2 weeks' time, I believe, February 13th, a conversation with Safia Talley and a local dyer and spinner, Lori Patterson, talking about a new book Safia has coming out, How to Knit 2 Socks in One. This is kind of geared towards our crafting community, our crafting folks. We hope you'll take a look at that and join us if that is your vein of interest. I think that we're done. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you
Have a
so
great
much.
day.
You.
Bye.